So again, welcome to our Sunday morning sitting group. My name is Trudy. InsightLA is all my fault. No, I'm the founder, but really so many other wonderful people came to join me, and now we have a big community of teachers and participants and community members, all kinds. And yeah, if you want to put in the chat where you're from, I noticed that, oh, hi Zuleika, I haven't seen you for a long time. Hi there. South Dakota, okay. Well, you don't need to be from anywhere exotic, like South Dakota is for us. But yeah, just curious to see where you're coming from. I love to see Virginia, New York, and of course here. So for those of you who are new to the sitting group, oh yeah, Boston had your first big snowstorm, right? For those of you who are new to sitting group, we divide it roughly into just 3 sections. The first one, we meditate together, very simply, and then I offer some teachings, and then we have a chance to have some dialogue and conversation. And then after 12:30, there's a break for 10 minutes. And for those of you who are able, stay for a breakout group. They're usually about, I don't know, 20 minutes or so, maybe half hour if people really are enjoying it. And it's a really nice way to get to know people now that we're not in person together. And it's also a chance to talk about your practice. Many people are not so comfortable sharing, in front of so many Zoom squares. So it's a time when you can really share and learn with each other. Years ago, a Tibetan Buddhist meditation teacher, very revered teacher, said once, he was talking about people working in small groups and learning with each other. And he said, you can really share your confusion and learn together. And I thought, well, who wants to share? Who wants to share their confusion? How is that going to help me? But I've come to understand that it really is helpful to share our confusion. There's always somebody who is less confused and has a little more clarity, and we can really, yes, totally learn from each other. As the great Vietnamese Zen teacher who is still alive in his 90s, Thich Nhat Hanh, said, the next Buddha will be the Sangha, will be the community of each other. So let's meditate. Let's sit together. I say sit, and it's a really all-inclusive term. It includes lying down or standing up, maybe not walking, although there was somebody, Jeff used to walk while he was listening and participating here. But it's probably good to choose one of the more stationary postures. So either sitting up, lying down, standing up, just beginning to, yes, get settled, get comfortable. You won't stay comfortable if you stay in the same position the whole time. It's likely you'll get some discomfort, but that's also part of what we're doing here with the mindfulness and loving awareness practice, is learning how to be with all the flavors of experience that inevitably come our way in this human life. So taking a deep breath in and then breathing out. Wait, I did it opposite. I breathed out when I said take a deep breath in. Taking a deep breath in and releasing. And one more time, breathing in the aliveness of this moment. And breathing out any noticeable tension in the body. And again, breathing in a long, intentionally deep breath in. And letting it go. And in meditating with mindfulness and loving kindness, essentially what we're doing is bringing awareness to life in the form of this body, this breath, this sensation in the body, the sounds of life around you. And letting the thoughts and feelings just flow by. So resting your attention gently with the movement of the breath. Sensing and feeling the breath in the body. And if you have a cold or asthma or some other reason why the breath isn't a soothing subject of meditation, you can bring attention to the sensations in the hands, or the whole body. The sounds, the phenomena of this moment. And by bringing attention to the breath and to the body, opening the senses in this way, and returning to these experiences that connect us to this particular moment of life. As we do this, we're opening the window of tolerance of what we can be with, just a crack, a little bit wider. And noticing when the attention has drifted right out that window. We gently bring back. Learning to focus or concentrate is a gentle process. Just gently coming back to being here. And if there's discomfort of any kind in the body, just bring attention to the area of the body that doesn't hurt. And maybe the toes or the soles of the feet. Your hair or fingernails. And if there's real pain, just letting the attention get bigger and bigger and bigger. Taking that backward step from being immersed in the experience to kind of standing next to it. Observing, noticing. With the kindest attention. And if the mind is so busy or the heart is upset and generating lots of thoughts and feelings, just gently move the body back just a half an inch or an inch. And sensing the relaxation when you sit back even a little bit more. Lying down, you can just relax a little bit more into the ground or wherever you're lying. Allowing the breath to come to you, to breathe you. Not leaning forward to anticipate the next moment, but just relaxing back and receiving this one. Sensing and feeling this moment with the whole body, with your whole heart, 100% present. By stepping back, by shifting the focus of attention to awareness itself, just noticing what's being seen, felt, sensed, touched. This is a way to experience the kind of consciousness that we have. Becoming the inner witness of this whole experience we call ourself. And this capacity, this willingness to shift the focus of our consciousness, to be lovingly aware of how it is in each moment of life. This is an act of self-compassion, of kindness, of love. So thank you, everybody. I actually left my notes, some of my notes in the other room. I'm going to be right back. So once again, I'll just introduce myself. If you just popped in after we started sitting, my name is Trudy. I'm the founder at InsightLA. and sifting through lots of notes because I'm also teaching the Costa Rica retreat that we didn't go to, but teaching on Zoom. So I wasn't sure if I could be here today, but I'm really happy that I am. And I'm speaking to you from Venice, California, from the unceded lands of the Chumash, Tongva, Keys tribes who were in the whole LA basin. And acknowledging the ancestors who were here before us is important. And it's important in our own lives too, because I know that sometimes, many times actually, sustaining any kind of daily practice, making room to attend retreats, especially when they're on Zoom, clearing enough of the decks at home to be able to do that, it takes a lot of effort. And it's just good to know that there are people who have done this before us. They probably haven't been on Zoom, although who knows, lifetimes ago, what life was like. But they have all our spiritual ancestors have made that effort to open the heart to, I like Dan Siegel's expression, opening the window of tolerance. Some of you were with me a couple months ago, it's been 2 months now, when my beloved friends, Katie J and Gabriel, had been killed suddenly, and tragic losses like that feel unbearable. And to be able to bear the unbearable, which doesn't mean that it makes it okay in any way, but just having the courage to be present with these kinds of experiences that happen in our lives, whether it's losses of loved ones from COVID, whether it's losses of the life that you loved to have before COVID, whether it's the losses of reckoning with the increased understanding on the parts of white people. Black and brown people have always understood about the racial injustice and economic injustice and the environmental injustice and climate change. All of these overlapping sort of meta crises can just feel unbearable sometimes. And this practice is what allows us to bear the unbearable, to be with it. And working with ourselves individually is not something we have to do until we get enlightened enough to act in the world. But I think what I love about it is it gives me a sense to do what I love, which is these spiritual practices of meditation, of mindfulness, of loving kindness, of compassion, of equanimity, of love and joy, to do these things and share them with you. And also know that it's not like a sequential thing. First, you have to get enlightened and then you can go help out. But they work hand in hand. And you can see it in your friends who are working in the social justice space. It can be so fraught and so riddled with conflict that to have a way to work with ourselves individually to gain some semblance of sanity and clarity in the midst of it all can be what allows any one of us to be of service and to participate in helping out wherever we can with some measure of harmony and tolerance for each other. So last week I talked about, for the new year, we set some intentions. We talked about the wise understanding of what this life is that we're involved in, how much huger and more vast it is than we're usually aware of when we're just thinking about, the laundry and what's for dinner and am I going to meet this deadline and the various things, who's going to take care of whatever child or pet, the things that we are concerned with in our everyday lives, that when we're sort of walking around immersed in all of that, it's really easy to forget the vastness and beauty of the life that's bigger than all of that too. So we looked at our individual lives and really kind of spent a moment or two reflecting on where we want our lives to go. Where do you want your life to go in this coming year? Lit a candle, set the intention, shared some of those intentions, It's easy to forget, especially if you're living alone and trying to stay safe from this new variant. It's easy to forget that we're not really alone, that we're actually in this life together, that we may be physically, geographically separated, but that in fact, we're working together to cultivate what I was calling the field of goodness. In the Zen tradition, we say the formless field of benefaction. I love that expression. But it's this field of goodness, we could say in the traditional Buddhist text called merit or punya. And every time we do what we just did, which is meditate with the intention to stay present with experience, not by squinching up and concentrating and getting all tense about it, but by just relaxing into receiving this moment, receiving this one. And then when my mind wanders away to the next one or the one that came before, just again, stepping back, receiving this moment, because that is the intention, not to follow all the fears and negativities that arise in the heart all the time. And it's a way that every time we do this, each time we bring the mind back actually to just being here, appreciating this life wholeheartedly with all our mustering all of our presence. Each time we do that, we're actually regenerating that field of goodness, strengthening it and regenerating it. This kind of, this field that we're all in, that we're all part of. So just give me a moment to look at my notes here and what I absolutely wanted to share with you today. Usually a little bit better organized, but okay. You know, I was thinking about this field of goodness in terms of parenting too. Some of you are parents, and even if you're not a parent, I think you have some, through your friends or family members, some inkling of what that work of being a parent is like. And I was remembering a time when my granddaughter was an infant and I was babysitting for her. And it was bedtime and she was just beside herself because her mother wasn't there and she was used to nursing pretty much all the time. And she was just screaming and she kept kneading her little fist into my chest, looking for her mother's breast, which was of course not on my chest, and getting, refusing a bottle and just getting more and more and more upset. And I was just walking with her, doing all the things you try to do, patting, walking, singing. Yeah, nothing was working. And I put her down in her crib. Oh, she would settle down. Yeah, after a while with my holding and walking and patting, she would settle down and then I would put her hopefully down in the crib. If you've ever had a baby, you know this feeling. And then it would all just start up again, the screaming. And then I would pat her little soft head and try to calm her down. And anyway, we went through several cycles of the picking up, the walking. And in one of the lying down moments, I just gave up. I gave up trying to make it all better. I gave up trying to comfort her. I just sat and looked at her and smiled and said, I started talking to her. I'm sorry, I'm not your mom. Your mom will be back. And I don't know if it was my tone of voice or what, but suddenly I think it was something about my letting go of my agenda for her to stop crying. She stopped and she looked at me, and just for a moment, all that tension fell away. You know, these moments from your own experience, on or off the cushion or chair. It was just a moment of pure presence with each other. And I felt so happy, probably happy that she had stopped crying, but also happy for the connection. And she broke into this little gummy grin. She didn't have any teeth yet, and started wiggling her body all over and was very happy. And of course it didn't last. She fell apart and started to scream again. But that next time, with the walking and the patting and the walking back and forth, she did fall asleep for good. But it reminded me of how intense human suffering can be. Infants feel it, toddlers feel it, and we might think, why are you having a meltdown? It just because I didn't have, I don't know, the bowl you wanted. But for that little being, their suffering is just as intense and real as ours when we lose something we love, or when we are frustrated in something we want. And beginning to understand the reality of this throughout the life cycle, it helps me, and maybe you, if you reflect on it, not to feel so separate from each other, and not to feel so separate from the little beings in our hearts that we used to be at different stages of life. And we can bring loving kindness to each one of those, just soothing, patting, they're there. Sometimes the whole sitting, that's all it's about, is bringing some self-compassion to the judgments and the suffering, whatever kind of negativities are arising in our hearts. And so we also listen to each other's intentions. And I think this too is where we can get grounded in our sanity and clarity. By listening to each other's intentions, we get a small sense of being a community together. I say a small sense, but it doesn't have to be small. Those of you who've been coming week after week, year after year, even these last almost 2 years on Zoom, there is still some sense of community, and it's developed through listening to each other, through looking at the teachings together, but most of all, just through our times of sitting, lying down, standing, walking, the times that we're simply aware, exploring our consciousness, exploring what it means to be sort of the interior witness of one's own consciousness. And to be that witness with a sense of understanding and compassion. Oh, this is what it's like to be you, to be me in this particular moment in all eternity. This is what it's like. Yeah. So grounding in our sense of community, even when we're alone, knowing that we're part of a community of kinship, really, with all beings, with all life. A couple of months ago, I spoke to you about Monica Gaglioni's research, excuse me, at the University of Sydney on plant consciousness and learning about how plants can learn, just like dogs or cats can be trained or learn, just like we can be trained. It's a little simpler. It's really, about operant conditioning. It's really simpler, but the fact that plants can learn is astonishing. And it really points to the presence of consciousness in all forms of life. And this is a consciousness that we share. And sometimes people talk about oneness. I don't know about you, that experience of the name oneness never fit exactly the experience that I would have of connection with all life. So I did what I'm sure many of you have done, which is put that experience outside of myself and say, oh, I'm not having it. Comparing my understanding intellectually, conceptually of some experience that I was reading about in my spiritual books or hearing my teachers talk about, and then applying it to myself, finding myself wanting, not having that experience, instead of tuning into the experience of my own heart. What is your experience of connection with all life? And it might come to when you're taking care of your cat or dog or feeding yourself, but what is your experience of it? Not what you think it should be, not what you've read about and know that you aren't, but what is yours? In this new year that we're beginning, and we're beginning it's a fraught beginning for the new year. The whole world is going through something scary and uncertain. more than life. Of course, life is always scary and uncertain when we're paying attention, but more than that, we're beginning the new year in a kind of special context that we've never experienced before as a species, not quite like this, or at least not in recorded history quite like this. So how can we be with this? And when I use the word we, it's not assuming that we're all the same. To the contrary, what I'm really trying to talk about today is that each one of us is different and connected. Each one of us has our unique way of receiving the teachings, of making them be part of you and your life. It's going to look different for each one of us, but we are each making this effort. And that's the feeling of community, that we're in this together. That we're doing it together. And so we share the sense of community. We share some practice routines, the willingness to sit down and meditate, hopefully every day, but at least a few times a week. And if not that, then on Sunday morning when we're together. They have meditation clubs called Zazenkai in Japan, where people get together and meditate once a week. And that's their practice. So there's nothing wrong or anything about that. It's enough. The wonderful British psychoanalyst and pediatrician, D.W. Winnicott, he talked about what my first teacher, the Korean Zen master, we called him Daesansanim, the Venerable Sung San. He used to say, Zen is enough mind. And Winnicott had a very compassionate way of talking about parenting. You may have heard the phrase, the good enough mother or the good enough parent. Sometimes I feel the whole work of our spiritual life is feeling that who we are and what we're doing is good enough. Good enough. Ram Dass used to say that the whole of spiritual life and work and sadhana is this movement from the head down into the heart. And when we're in our hearts, we can accept much more easily that who we are, that what our life is about, that it's good enough simply because it is. This is what it is. And good enough doesn't mean that we all don't aspire to be even better. We do, but in what spirit? In the spirit of, yes, there's even more to learn. There's even more to discover. There's even more depth to realize in this life. That's a beautiful spirit of aspiration, right? Or is it the spirit of, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, my practice isn't good enough? It's a kind of excessive humility that can border, sort of tip over into a feeling of worthlessness, and that's obviously not where we're headed. So the practice routines, whatever the routine that you have, is another way that we can ground ourselves in the field of goodness, positive intention for the new year. I noticed that there's a few people that I haven't seen for a long, long time who are here today, which makes me very happy. And it also makes me remember, yes, it's the new year. This is when we set the intentions. This is when we make New Year's resolutions. I talked last week about why those have never worked. But this is also a time when we come back to and honor the various refuges in our lives. The refuge in awareness or consciousness and learning more about that, opening to more of it. The refuge that we can find in the teachings that teach us it's not our fault, it's not personal, this is how life is, and this is how we can work with it and move through it with more grace and ease and love. And the refuge in community, we call it Sangha. I heard a story one teacher told about, they were actually chanting the refuges. This was Ruth, I'm blocking her line, Ruth Dennison, who had a meditation center out in the desert near Joshua Tree, and was one of the first women, Western women, to teach Vipassana. And she passed away a few years ago at a very ripe old age, amazing person. So Ruth was having the students in her retreat chant these refuges. I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. The Buddha is what I'm calling consciousness or awareness. The Dharma are these teachings, and the Sangha is our community. And afterwards, this one student raised her hand and said, I just don't understand why we're taking refuge in the sun god. And Ruth kind of, Sangha, yeah. But the beautiful thing about that question is she was willing to do it. She just wanted to understand why were we going for refuge in the sun god. So it's a funny word, Sangha, but it's a word in Pali and in Sanskrit that means these refuges. And what we're doing as we gather in the new year is just honoring and reminding ourselves we are not without refuge, even in the moments that feel hopeless and despairing and lonesome and just plain bad. We have these inner refuges, and they can be with us anytime we remember about them. And then there's just the rhythm of breathing, of being alive, of sensing, of opening all our senses, of feeling the simplicity of the body and the breath and what we can really know in each moment, and letting that be just enough. That's really all I need to know in this moment. The Buddha said, even, all you really need to know is if the breath is moving in or whether it's moving out, just to be that level of noticing and mindfulness. Again, not having to really tense up and try to concentrate and penetrate deeper, just knowing simply, okay, I'm breathing in. Okay, I'm breathing out. Okay, we're here together. We're here. That's enough. That's enough for now. Yeah. So I feel like what I would like to do now is teach you more through the exchange with each other. And, it is true that when I went out to get my notes, I didn't find them. So often I offer you like this very neat and tidy talk that ties up very beautifully at the end, or at least I try to make it that way. I don't know how it lands in you. It's not that way today. So today, I'd like to just continue teaching by inviting you to bring your thoughts, your questions, your responses. We don't say Q&A anymore. It's Q&R, because I don't have the answers here. I'm just exploring these realms side by side with you. And maybe I've just been doing it a little longer, probably a lot longer. So, then you find yourself sitting in the teacher seat. But thank you, Gabby. Thank you, much appreciated. But yeah, very chat positive here. So feel free to use the chat if you want to. And yeah, anything that you're wondering about in your own practice, and there's some regular speakers, who chime in when nobody else talks to save me from wondering why no one's talking, which is a very generous and kind gesture. But what happens if we just see who might talk if you don't? Let's just see. Which isn't to say I don't 100% appreciate your generosity. I do. And you can raise your hand with the reaction button at the bottom of your screen, bottom right, or you can wave wildly and Ava will look through the pages. Most of the people with their cameras on, most of you are in the first or second page. And some of you are teachers who are here. And I'm not going to call you out by name, but you know who you are. So you might have something that you'd like to share from your own teaching experience. Nancy. You can unmute yourself, okay?
Hi, and thank you very much for your spontaneous words. Sometimes those are the best, don't you find? Okay, I wanted to thank you for last week, last Sunday, when you helped us to think about intentions for the year. And, I had some experience with being overreactive. And I don't tend to be an overreactive person, but I noticed that I was being reactive things that people would say to me. And I think it's closed in for too long. I think that has a lot to do with it. And then you become kind of hyper sensitive to things. So my intention is to try to be more responsible and less reactive to others. And already it's helping me. It's calming me down. And I am a teacher. I teach in graduate school at the University of Maryland, but I teach online, and which is nice too, because I have time to reflect and be less reactive. But even so, you can be really reactive in a Zoom classroom or in an online classroom. So it is helping me there and in my personal interactions as well. So I just wanted to thank you for guiding us in setting those intentions. Thank you very much.
Well, that could be a whole nother definition of what the practice is for, to guide us from that reactivity to more responsiveness or responsibility, as you said. But I want to just bow to you because you put it right into practice. It's only been a week and you see the difference already. You know what they say in the 12-step programs, it works if you work it. It's the same here,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, and I think those experiences that I had, I won't go into them in detail, it just shook me. There were a couple of them. Life has this karma sort of thing where they happened right within the same week. I was traveling to see my daughter in another country, and I was tired and I was impatient in the airport and all that. And I was just overreactive. And
sometimes it takes that much for you to see it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It has to, reach that point. Otherwise, it's sort of the water we're swimming in. We don't even notice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Debbie.
Hi, Trudy.
Hi.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for that talk. I'm so impressed that you did that from no notes. Wonderful. I don't have a question. I just wanted to say how much I really appreciated something you mentioned, which was your connection to all beings, and that you really named that, we sometimes hear what other people's description are of things, and we get it in our heads that that's what it's supposed to be like.
Right.
And oftentimes it might not be exactly that. And it is different. And we can have these different experiences, but they can be, I guess it can be still all the same. We can be talking about all the same thing, but experiencing it somewhat differently. And it's so easy to get caught up in that comparison mind and wanting, like you mentioned, wanting to have a certain experience. So I just really appreciate that you mentioned that and asked us to find what our experience is of the connection to all beings. That's really important.
Do you feel like sharing yours in any way? You don't have to. I don't want to put you on the spot. I'm just curious.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about it when you said it, and I have it often with my dog. When I'm walking him and I just see him, just like, my heart opens up and I just see like his little legs going. Or when he's eating, it's often when he's eating and I hear crunching or licking up water, the sound of that, it just like, it makes my heart explode a little bit. It's such a silly thing, but that to me is really, it's like this spontaneous opening up. And it's from this like connection of, oh, this little being is kind of dependent on me for these things. And I'm taking care of him.
Thank you. That is beautiful. And it's a beautiful illustration of how it doesn't have to be some, I don't know, magnificent, orgasmic spiritual explosion of whatever, it's just these things that are our moments of our life. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I was really talking about that, just what you named, the comparison. The comparing mind that says, and also I've struggled a lot in my own practice over the years with, teachers maybe who wanted to see things presented in a certain way so that they could understand the experience I was having. And it's frustrating actually. And sometimes when we focus on, that pleasurable sound of a dog's long tongue lapping up the water, right? It's such a great sound. That's something we can all understand. So thank you.
Thank you.
Lane, can you unmute yourself? Yeah. Whoops. Where'd she go? She had her hand up.
I'm here.
Oh, good. Hi. Hi.
Hi.
Oh my gosh, I have to just tell everybody, Lane and I have practiced together, like, I don't know how many decades in Massachusetts. And Lane also was my art teacher, and I just love you so much.
Well, I was feeling so sleepy during the meditation, and I thought, before I thought of anything I wanted to say, I thought, well, if I raise my hand and am talking, I'll have to wake up. And that really worked. And then I thought that, it is so great to see you and hear you, Trudy. It really is. It's wonderful. I wanted to thank you for your story about the crying baby. And I so remember times like that with my granddaughters, with my daughters, and just how your description of letting go was so great. I didn't know what you were going to say. I thought you might be going to say you just blew up at her and yelled at her. But when you said, I just sat down and smiled at her and talked to her, it was so great. It's kind of what I think when I have the presence of mind, I do to myself. It's like I can just sort of just smile and, as a way of offering metta, to just say, it's okay, or it's enough. I guess that's the other thing I wanted to thank you for, is the reminder of enoughness.
Yeah.
Not needing to try to get it or get more or be something, but just to be, I'm enough to get that. That's a great teaching, a great thing to be reminded of.
Well, thank you. Lane is a teacher in her own right. So I really appreciate, your appreciation very much. And also you're drawing attention to the fact that, the crying baby within, having that willingness to let go of trying to in some way get ourselves into shape, right? Whether it's pats on the back. I remember watching, some of you may have seen it, it wasn't the recent documentary about Muhammad Ali. It was a documentary called When We Were Kings, I think it was about the rumble in the jungle, his fight with George Foreman. And he kept trying to psych himself up for the fight. Of course, it worked. He won that fight. But for us, just the willingness to stop trying to either constantly psych ourselves up or just make it be different in some way than the way it is, right? I love that you drew that connection to the way we treat ourselves. And it's so much easier to see when it's a baby or somebody outside of ourselves. Yeah. Thank you. And it is lovely to see you. And I know you have transcendent experiences with your dog too. Like Debbie, right? Oh, I can't see. Can you? It's a little dark, but I can see. Oh, hi. I can see your eyes. Hi. Thank you. Beautiful. Oh, thanks for posting the classes, Ava. And thank you for Gabby, Nicholas, and Katie. While you're all exploring whether you actually want to say something, I don't see anyone else's hand up. If somebody else's hand is up, point that out to me, Ava, because I don't see. But, while you're up, oh, Gabby, okay, good. I'll say I was going to share something with you. Gabby, hi.
Hi, I'm here. I guess I should be on camera now.
Yeah, there you are.
Today.
With a beautiful forest behind you.
I know I was at the Armstrong Redwoods during Christmas, and because they got burned last year and I couldn't visit them for a whole year. So it was nice to be there again. And they're all kind of smoky, but they're like, I'm still here. We're still here. We're still surviving. So it was nice to be there. And it was a rough end of the year for me because I planned to be with my family during the holidays, but plans failed through because there was a family situation and I felt I needed some space. And just a big secret that was my mom held for 40 years actually, came out to the surface. And as a family, we're gonna do our best to deal with it. And but also just be mindful that we're still a family no matter what. Nothing's gonna change that. So my celebrations for the holidays ended up being more here, and my family were the Redwoods, so I ended up going to them during the Christmas. I spent time with them, and it was really heavy at the end of the year for me. But towards the beginning, one day I woke up and I'm like done. Like it was like my mind was like in a whole different. It was a whole shift. Like I woke up into a different life. Because I was feeling really heavy, when things like that happen, like pouring rain and your mind is just, it's too much. And then the next morning I'm like, oh, it just kind of went away. But I did a lot of meditation and praying and all that stuff. It just went book. I was like, wow, man, this meditation works.
It does.
So because I did call all my universe, all my helpers, everything to help me get through this, and it just went book. So yeah, I was really surprised when we reach for help and it comes to you in some way. I just always noticed that. But it was helpful today talk to just listen and connect with all of you. I think that's always really helpful. It gives you like an injection of, like not like an injection like a vaccine, but like an injection of like being alive and just being blessed and count my blessings no matter what. That helps for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for today's practice, because that baby was crying at the end of the year. Like, ah! I was like, ah! And I had to soothe it. So.
Well, you did a good job. It seems so good. That's wonderful. A friend was calling me. She said, I have such good news. And the good news was that somebody she had been really angry with for good reason, okay, completely justified anger. She does a New Year's Eve ceremony with her kids, and they all, think of something they want to let go of, and then they write it down, and then they make a fire and they burn it, and they have a whole ritual that way. And she said she had written down this long, long, long list of the things she was so angry at this person about. And she, like you, she was meditating and praying and wanting to let go of it. She burned it in the fire. Well, she called me, I think 5 days after New Year's Day and said, I can't believe it. It's gone. I spoke to her and I felt nothing but compassion and love for her. And I spoke to her that way and she began to cry. It's a totally shifted the relationship. So yeah, it does work. It does work. Thank you. Bob.
Hi, Trudy. Thank you. I love your talk about it enough. And there are 3 words that came to mind. One is it's a huge relief to get that.
Oh yeah.
Right. But the other word I kept hearing was humility. Because there's a lot of humility in that, like the part of my ego that wants more, everything, and almost sometimes even kind of in a grandiose sort of way. The humility comes, and that's a great thing to cultivate for me. And then the other thing I thought about was grief, which is when I do get that I'm enough, then I'm sad about the loss of that exalted ambition. So anyway, I have to honor the humility and the grief in order to really experience the relief. But the relief makes space for that. So.
Yeah, it does. That's a great way of saying it. The relief makes space for the other feelings, which I never thought of it that way. So thank you. Jack Engler, a psychologist who wrote about meditation a lot in the last century, he used to say that whenever you have an insight, it is accompanied with some grief. And I really saw that. And I've taught that since in my own experience that, yeah, I think I even talked about it recently here, that when you realize something that you absolutely hadn't seen before, it just wasn't available to see that. And then you do. And it can be joyful and relieving, but there's also, even when it's a joyful realization, there's also this sense of, oh my gosh, how different my life might have been if I had seen this earlier. Maybe it was even last week we talked about that. But yeah, so it just seems part of the natural movement of awakening. And we awaken to more and more understanding. And we have to let go of the previous ones. And that's not so easy to do. A lot of our identity gets tied up with all that, and especially conditioning. You and I are around similar age group, right? And I think I'm older than you are, but still we're up there. And the conditioning as a man, at least from your generation, from my father's generation, the conditioning is to be great and to be Superman in some way, in some area, and to let ourselves be ordinary and to be enough. Even though in the Zen teachings, it says ordinary mind is the way. They're not talking about the ordinary mind of being preoccupied and completely fucked up, excuse me. They're not talking about that. They're talking about the simple mind of clarity, of seeing just what is and how it is. But there's nothing grandiose about that, right? So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, hi. So Shiti, go ahead.
Hold on, let me just, okay. I sensed the hesitation in pronouncing my name.
No, it's like I used to know how to pronounce it. I forgot.
It's okay. It's
Say
like,
it again. Say it again.
I've experienced it my whole life, so I just
I
kind of giggle
know.
about it now. Sochi,
Sochi.
like the Sochi Olympics.
Oh, that's so easy.
Wow.
No, I was embarrassed because you've taught me before and
It's okay.
yeah.
I've been called Xanadu, Coachella. It's just
No, at least I knew it was a soft
no, you're good.
Yeah, Sochi.
I was just in talking about grief a second ago.
Yeah.
I wanted to also just thank you for expressing your grief with us several weeks ago when your friends passed away. And I'm very sorry about that. And I just wanted to express how grateful I was that you were able to express that grief. And
Why?
share it.
Yeah, tell me why. I mean, I didn't plan to cry, but tell me why it was helpful to you.
I think I have experienced a lot of grief that I haven't been able to express, and I think it's kind of all coming out. And it's almost this feeling of not being alone in the world and feeling grief, right? And being in a context where someone else feels comfortable in a way expressing grief. And maybe that's not the case, but that's what it felt like. Like it was a way of safely expressing grief.
Oh yeah, it was, yeah.
And that's something that I'm learning how to do, and that a lot of people I know still very much struggle with, like how to be able to feel grief and not just run from it and hide it and have it become complex grief, right?
Yes.
And I'm also a teacher. I teach at a university here in LA. And it's also being with young people who have experienced grief in the last 2 years, and how to kind of combine the intellectual stuff with emotional intelligence and acceptance, and giving them space to process that grief in the context of a classroom too. And like just, I don't know, figuring out ways to make it okay. And there was a certain kind of okayness of expression that I experienced with you in the last, and I was just really grateful for it. And I cried afterwards, because it allowed me to also just feel a lot of stuff that is there, and that just right now just wants to be present. So
wow, I'm really, it sounds weird, I'm really glad to hear that you sobbed after my teaching. But I am, because I don't know if I told this part when I was talking about having heard the news when I was standing at the carousel in the airport, or, when we were going to teach the Ramdas retreat, and the friend who told me, I cried and cried and cried and cried when she told me. And later she said to me, I was really jealous of your being able to sob like that. And but I knew what she meant, because she hadn't, for her, it was coming out as just irritation with everybody. It was coming out more as anger.
Yeah.
And that's legitimate too, but there is something, I think what you're pointing to is just the simplicity of being able to be sad when you're grieving. Then it can flow, and it's still incredibly sad, but it's cleansing too for the heart.
It's also like this distinction between heartbreak and collapse, and then heart opening through heartbreak.
Exactly.
And a few months ago on Instagram, you posted this image of a broken heart kind of growing into a flower. And that was right when someone in my life left, and I held on to that. I'm like, something really beautiful can come from this heartbreak. And so thank you for that.
Yeah.
There is something beautiful that comes from really just intense grief, and I have to hold on to that too.
Yeah. And I mean, Lane and I have shared that kind of intense grief in the past too, and with our own lives. And there is something beautiful that can come out of it, but you can't, unfortunately, make the beautiful thing happen. You have to go through the grief.
I'm learning that.
So your students are really lucky, Sochi.
Thanks. Well,
Yeah.
I'm lucky to have you as a teacher too.
Well, this is the point, isn't it? We pass it on, right? We pass it on. We share, we pass it on. And that's what I was saying earlier. Like, I just feel so lucky because the things that I love, I get to share with you. And then, you know, if they connect, if you connect with them and you love them, then you share them. And this is how we create that field of goodness. It's how we cultivate it, create it, and regenerate it too. So thank you. Oh gosh, it's time actually to stop. So let's just find a moment to sit together. I mean, a posture to sit together for a moment. And I'll ring the bell. Jim, I think I fixed the Zoom thing that you told me to make the bell sound okay. Did the bell sound like a bell or did it just sound clink? Does it sound like a bell? Raise your thumb, or was it clink?
It's still choked a little bit. I can talk with you offline about how to fix it.
All right, yeah, let's do that. Maybe when everybody goes to their breakout groups,
Okay.
we can
Sure.
do that.
Okay.
Okay, so let's just sit together for a moment. At the end of a period of study and practice together, we take just this moment to make a kind of imaginative offering, an offering that we do through the power of our imagination, which is to share the goodness of our practice, whatever has been beneficial, useful, that we've enjoyed during this time together, to offer that from our hearts to all beings everywhere without exception. May we and all beings find a true sense of refuge and, as Charles just said, of human connection. May we and all beings continue to create, cultivate, and regenerate this field of goodness and mercy. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. And I think I'm going to be here next week. If I'm not here next Sunday, I'll be here the Sunday after, but it's always posted on the website who's teaching. And if I'm not teaching, it's one of the teachers that I've mentored. They're all good teachers. And so come and support them and each other by practicing together. So you're welcome to unmute yourselves, to say hi, goodbye. And I encourage you to stay for a breakout group if you possibly can. They're going to start, what time did Ava say here in the chat? They're going to start at 12:40 in 8 minutes. So you have time to do whatever you need to do for 8 minutes. And I'll see you soon, if not next week, the week after.
Thank you, Trudy, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy
Have a
New
good week,
Year,
everybody.
Happy New
Bye.
Year.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Thank you, Trudy.